Hello everybody, welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer related video. As you can see, I'm slightly dejected by the fact that I have recorded a 10-minute video, uploaded it, tweeted it, all that nonsense. I was quite happy with it. Forgot to unmute the sound when editing because these videos don't even take much to edit, to be honest. However, I've made a mistake, and when I uploaded the video, I then deleted all the raw stuff, and I was thinking, right, okay, that's fine, we'll carry on as normal. But no, my idiotic decisions have meant that I've had to stand here and record this again. I could quite easily have said nothing and pretended that everything is fine, but no, I'm stupid. What's new? Let's talk about Norwich City. As you can tell by the title, we're going to talk about Marquinhos and Christos Tzolis returning. However, I want to start the video on a more positive note in terms of my general outlook on Norwich City's transfer window thus far. I think it's been a fairly positive one, and do you know what? That is heavily influenced by this new direction, this sort of new regime that Norwich City are following. The man, David Wagner, obviously, Wagner's at the wheel, is the spearhead behind this sort of shift in mentality behind sort of most of the fans in terms of being more positive and patient, and this idea that we are believing in a project again. It's all very exciting, and it's affected massively my outlook on this transfer window in the sense of where I'm at with Norwich City. What I think is going on is mostly positive. What I think is going on, I will tell you right now, which is David Wagner is assessing the squad. He's got a pretty decent squad ahead of him. You know, we've seen so far Norwich City can play very, very good, very attractive football under him. There are lots of things to iron out, if you will, in terms of the chances conceded, but we know the price for attempting to play this heavy metal sexy football. There we go. We know the price of that, which it's still early days. We still know that David Wagner is going to have to sort of iron out these creases, if you will. But in terms of the general positivity, David Wagner is overviewing the squad ahead of the summer, in my opinion. This isn't anything I've been told. This is just what I think is going on. Ahead of the summer, where we'll see, for me, a shift in personnel. We'll see people leave by the end of their contract. We'll see some fees hopefully generated for transfer activity in the summer. We'll see bodies come in, and we'll see a couple of James Husbands, if you will, like Daniel Farke's first season. But we'll also see some Emi Buendias. We'll also see some Timu Pukki's, hopefully. I think where Norwich City are at in terms of this rebuild is they're further ahead than what they were when Daniel Farke came into the job. When Daniel Farke came into the job, there was this massive mentality shift around the club. The training ground was not half as good as what it is at the moment. These kind of things will, I think, essentially mean that David Wagner skips a few steps in terms of this rebuild. It would be more so what's going on the pitch, if you catch what I'm saying. So in terms of the lack of activity, I'm kind of okay with it because you don't really want too much disruption. And on that note of disruption, Todd Cantwell has left Norwich City. Not that I think he was a massive disruption, but I think letting him go is such an important thing. You know, a loan is one thing, but a permanent move is another. It allows him to go and kick on with his career. He can do whatever he wants. I'm sure we'll always be informed of it by the local media in terms of how he's getting on at Rangers. I personally am not particularly fussed, but I'm neither here nor there with it. Jordan Hugill is another example of a player who was never really good enough, but was always sort of a positive player to have around the training ground. As a fan, that doesn't really affect me, but you can appreciate his value to the squad. But getting rid of him and freeing up sort of that wage space, if you will, makes me feel more positive in terms of the idea that Norwich City will make those signings in the summer to not necessarily replace someone like Hugill, because there is that depth, but it allows sort of that. The way I look at it is it's kind of like that roster space, like in the NBA, when you free up space, it allows space for someone to come in. They don't always have to come in, but it does allow that space to be had. So in terms of outgoings, I'm fairly positive. I think it will really continue in the summer as players come towards the end of their contracts. I think Kieran Dowell personifies how I feel about this sort of current David Wagner assessing the squad. Under Dean Smith, you could have said to me, right, Kieran Dowell can go because nothing is going to happen. He's not going to get anything out of him at all. Whereas David Wagner, like Daniel Farke did in the Championship, seems to be getting a fine tune out of him, seems to, use that footballing philosophy mind to know how to get something useful out of him. Not just useful, but very good. So I think essentially Kieran Dowell is a more positive case study where his contract was running out, but under this new management, hang on a minute, let's give him a new contract, because maybe he can actually contribute towards whether it's this season or next season, a promotion push. For what it's worth, I really don't think this season should necessarily be fully centred around getting promoted back to the Premier League. I like this idea of a rebuild for so long under Dean Smith, and sorry, to keep crapping on you, but under Dean Smith, it was like, well, what's the project? What's the style of football? What's this? What's that? Whereas under Wagner, we know there is an established style of football before he even came. We've seen what he wants to do, and we can see the project that is taking place, if you will. And yeah, that's kind of my general overview of the activity. Now, let's talk about the two specifics, the two people in the title, Marquinhos and Tzolis. For me, they represent two different types of transfer. Obviously, Tzolis is being recalled back from a loan out to FC Twente. Marquinhos is joining Norwich from Arsenal. But in reality, you look at the credentials, they're two very young wingers who are supposed to be very confident and very attacking minded, very creative type players. But with Marquinhos, it's very much like a short term, this season impacting signing, this season only. Maybe we'd see him on loan next season if he's successful this season. I don't know, dare we speculate about that. But Michael Bailey did a really good tweet in terms of, he said, look, this is short term, but I'm here for the short-term excitement. I'm absolutely here for the short-term excitement. If Norwich had made this signing under the previous management, I'd be quite uninspired. And I'd compare it to Aaron Ramsey in the sense of young, raw, hungry, but being managed by the most uninspiring management team I think I've seen at Carrow Road for quite some time, to now seeing a manager who is pretty good at developing players, but also has a good system for them to come into. I feel like if I'm a player coming into David Wagner's system compared to Dean Smith's, I like it more in the sense of I know what I'm getting myself into. I kind of know what my role is. I know how the rest of the team should be operating, so I will know what to do for my job. So that's where I'm excited about Marquinhos, where he's not coming into a mess. Well, it might be a little bit, but he's coming into a squad that have a defined style that we aren't going to see at its very best for some time. And we know that, and we can believe in that project. But they're my thoughts on Marquinhos. The idea of it's kind of very, very low risk for Norwich City, but we're getting a young player who's hungry, under a decent manager. It's exciting. Let's see what happens. With Christos Tzolis, this is longer term. Again, similar player, sort of quick, creative, all those things, a position that Norwich have been crying out for, which is a winger, because we've only had Onel Hernandez, but realistically, he's not the long-term solution, is he? Someone like Christos Tzolis could be. Norwich City did pay a pretty penny for Tzolis by our own standards anyway, and things hadn't really worked out, but I'm reverting back to my prior excitement that I had to when he actually signed for Norwich, in the sense of, as I've just said about Marquinhos, you've got a young winger who it's slightly different in the sense of, Tzolis had that very prolific season at PAOK, didn't he? But it's the idea that he's young, hungry, got a point to prove for maybe slightly different reasons to Marquinhos, but this time it's under a manager who will have a clear plan and has a reputation, especially at championship level, in terms of getting the best out of teams and players. So with Tzolis, Norwich City own him, so there is that longer term solution. So in terms of the way I'm viewing Tzolis, I'm going to go back to that prior excitement. I'm not necessarily going to completely forget, but I'm going to use that sort of narrative that David Wagner has now set of, look, the past is in the past, we can't go back and change these things, but what we can do is look forward and affect our own future. We sort of create, we path our own future, which, for as cheesy as that might be, is a wonderful breath of fresh air to have at Norwich City, especially from the man in charge, from the head coach. So with Tzolis, yeah, it's very, very exciting. Do I think he's going to come in and score 15 goals between now and the end of the season, 10 assists, and get player of the season? No. But that doesn't matter. Like it was under Daniel Farke in his first season, you can kind of believe in the project. You know the direction it should go. Whether it goes there is a different matter, but we have that faith, we have that reason to be patient, we have that reason to believe in something once again, which is really exciting, to be honest with you, as a Norwich City fan, especially after the sort of prior 14 months of, utter dross that we were sort of subjected to. But yeah, they're my thoughts. I think that's sort of that's pretty quick fire by my standards anyway. But as I said, they're my thoughts. I would really love to know yours in the comments down below on anything I have discussed. Your thoughts on the window so far, the outgoings. It is currently 6 p.m. On deadline day. Of course, this video is going to go out as soon as I've recorded it. I believe Danel Sonani might be on his way out. He's another player where they aren't very good, so yeah, there's no future at Norwich City, whether it's a loan or permanent, I don't know. I've just sort of read on Twitter as I was ballsing up with this video that it's Wigan, I believe, leading the chase, but here's just another example of shifting dead weight, to be harsh. But yeah, my thoughts. I'd love to know your thoughts. Don't want to know my thoughts. Would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thumbs up if you fancy it. Subscribe too if you're feeling kind, and I will see you in the next one.